Welcome to Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. I'm Lori Falk, and together with my three powerhouse co-hosts and a slew of thought leaders and luminaries, we're bringing you a scintillating talk show style podcast that will disrupt the worlds of wealth and wellness as we know them today. We invite you to go on this journey with us as we offer you a paradigm shift that empowers you to change your approach to these key areas of your life. Join us and discover the truth that the future of wealth and wellness begins with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another amazing podcast session with Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed. My name is Jenny Dangerfield, and I am here with my three powerhouse co-hosts, and we are so excited to bring you a really amazing talk to start the year off. We are still in January, so we're still kind of in that mode of setting intentions for the year and really gearing up to have a very powerful and abundant 2025. So today we're going to be delving into a topic that we've kind of touched on the wellness aspect. We talked about really setting our intentions, and if you couldn't fail, what would you be doing for your health? And we're going to go into that for a wealth talk, talking about if you can't fail, what would you really be doing to bring in abundance for yourself? What would you be doing for work? Most of us have jobs. Most of us are out there earning some kind of living wage. What is a passion of yours that you haven't really explored yet? If money wasn't an object, if money was not an obstacle, what do you see yourself doing? And so we want to get into that and really kind of talk about setting financial intentions, thinking about what's stopping you from doing these things. For me personally, building my dream of being an entrepreneur has not come easy. And I often get from people that don't really understand a lot of what I do in the energy world, talk about, oh, you need to get a real job. What does that even mean? What does it mean to have a real job? So I really want to kind of kick off and shoot it over to Leslie, because we've had this conversation before, and she is our money confidence coach. And so this is really her expertise, and she leads women and has led women to break free from that, what we consider a real job, that norm from a 9 to 5, to really exploring their passions and kind of branching out and exploring something different. Because there is a beautiful quote that I love, and it says, if you are not building your dream, you're building it for someone else. Right? So if you're not working for yourself to build your own dream, then you're building someone else's dream, right? So Leslie, what do you do, and how do you help these women to break free from that? And what, if you were, I think that you're probably living that dream, but what does that bring up for you? The fear factor of being able to do what you want and feel unstoppable in that realm.
Such a timely question, Jen, because today I've been at a strategy session up in London with a group of female business owners. And one of the questions that we were asked to reflect on was our goals for 2025. Now, I don't know about the rest of you ladies, but what goes at the top of my page when it comes to my goals for the year is my financial goal. But what was very, very obvious from the conversation in the room, I was the only one that put my financial goal at the top of the page. Everybody wanted to pretty much bat away that question like the money didn't matter. Like the money was a dirty topic that was not to be openly discussed. And somebody said something. I've never heard this phrase before, but you're going to hear me saying it a lot more frequently going forward. I'm just going to remind myself exactly what it was. If you're not changing it, you're choosing it. And I thought that was really, really powerful. So if you are doing something that you don't love and you continue to do it, then actually you are choosing to do something that you don't love. There may be many, many reasons why you are choosing to do it, but you need to take a step back and to understand what that is based on. Is it based on fear? Is it based on limiting beliefs? Is it based on not really knowing what it is you really want to be doing? But if you don't sit back and ask yourself that question and be really honest with what comes up, then if you don't change it, you're choosing it. And all of a sudden, I think that changes the dynamic of what we are choosing to do with our lives. Because actually, when you realize it's a choice, I think it starts to slap you around the face like a big, cold, wet fish. Because lots of us, when we're doing something that we don't want to do, then actually we kind of blame external circumstances. Well, what else can I do? We're in a recession. There's not many jobs out there at the moment. I've been doing this for years. What about my pension? I've got all this stuff going on. That means I have to do this, when actually I really want to be doing that. But if you really want to be doing that, even if you don't know what that actually looks like, if you know you want to create change in your life, then it is really, really down to you to create the circumstances where you can create that change. Because if you don't make that change, then nobody else is going to. Does that
Yes,
kind of answer the question?
Yes.
I think you have honed in on, there's an expression that we use all the time and that we hear all the time, women's empowerment. And obviously, that's what we're aligned with here. But I think what you touched on is actually where the empowerment actually starts. Because I don't think most of us have been sensitized to the level of responsibility that we actually bear in all situations. And I remember, I love the quote you just shared because that really puts things into such clarity. And I had heard something at a personal development workshop many years ago that I think lent a similar focus. And it said, we are always in the creation of things. We're either actively creating something, we're promoting something, or we're allowing something. And I think what you just touched on was the allowing part. That is a passive choice. And we don't always take the responsibility for making it as a choice, but it is a passive choice when we're allowing something to continue and we're not taking action on it. It is a choice. And that may be a little confronting to some of us that are listening here. But I want to remind us about the power of the concept of choice. We've talked about that, here before, of approaching life just from the perspective. There's just always choices to make and things to do from moment to moment. And I think one of the things I would throw into the mix about what's stopping us and all of that, and I'll speak for myself. I'm really clear that I don't want to do anything that's not a superpower of mine. And I'm that's something this year that I'm taking a harder line on than I ever did before. That if it's not something I love and I'm good at, I want to collaborate with other people who are, or hire other people who really love that. Because one of the things we're exploring and holding space for here And I think it's reflected among the four of us of how we came together and how we function, is that, everybody's got different gifts and strengths. And the whole is so much greater than this, sum of the parts, that I think one of the obstacles a lot of women have had is thinking that we have to do everything. Because most of the time in our families and our personal lives, we do have to do everything. But, in a project like this, or lots of other, business activities that, we and others are engaged with, to me, that's one of the big wake ups, is realizing the value of focusing in on what our personal value and contributions really are, and not spending our time on anything else. I have found that to be extraordinarily liberating. And the other thing I would throw into the mix here, and Jenny and I have been exploring this a lot recently, is the power of asking the right questions. Because Leslie, what you were just pointing to, sometimes we don't know.
Yeah.
Sometimes we really don't know. But I'm coming from the perspective, and little tongue in cheek here, in our group, we've decided that things that used to be described as woo-woo are really quantum science these days. So from that perspective of quantum science and understanding the power of intention and energy and frequency and all of that, Jenny and I have been facing some of these things, and we realized that our value system assumes that the universe, our, whole higher beings really want us to be optimally fulfilled and expressed. And sometimes our conscious minds haven't caught up with that yet. So we've actually just been putting out questions when we don't have the answers, and going like, if I was going to go down that route, what would be the best way for it to come about? And the crazy things that have been happening are, opportunities that are showing up in answer to those questions that we've been asking very specifically. And sometimes it's only taken a half an hour for the phone to ring with an answer to one of those questions. But we've literally been exploring this consciously for months. So what would it look like to raise an income ceiling? And how would we open up that channel? And just kind of putting that out. Life is actually jumping in to provide some of those answers. And I've been experiencing a tremendous amount of expansiveness by understanding that the questions are sometimes more important than the answers. So I hope
how empowering is that?
stimulating.
Yeah. How empowering is that when you realize you have a choice, that life is happening for you rather than to you, if you see you have that choice. And when you start to look at your life and the path that you are on through that lens of choice, and therefore you can make different choices, then I think all of a sudden you stop putting the responsibility for what happens in your life into somebody else's hands, and you take back the power that you've not realized you've given to somebody else. I can see, Laura, you're dying to jump in.
Bursting at the seams, bursting at the seams. Having been a life coach and wellness coach for 20 plus years, the thing that I see the most is women sitting in the chair across from me or on Zoom in front of me now. And they don't know. They have spent so many years and sometimes decades doing what they should do versus what they might want to do, that they don't even know what they want to do. They honestly haven't given themselves permission to ask those questions. Susan, you're absolutely right. You got to ask the questions. But most of these women have been so suppressed. It's this era of women who have been everything, right? The homemaker, the wives, the mothers, and the breadwinners, or secondary breadwinners, sometimes primary breadwinners, and they haven't had the time to even think about it, nor do they think that they can, because this is what I hear of the most often, the I word. They can't go do what they want to do because what about insurance. Oh my goodness. That I never, ever, ever heard that until I started coaching. So many people in our society are terrified of not having that medical insurance. And this is the year that's all going to change, because when people really wake up and start to understand that their money needs to be invested in holistic ways of keeping the body and mind healthy versus treating symptoms, which is what insurance does. Oh, I'm a little passionate about this topic because never in my wildest dreams becoming a coach did I think that that was going to be the stopping point. And for so many women, it is.
But
And
not in the UK. But just to make that, that separation. In the UK, we have a national health system. Yes, some people choose to have private health insurance, but it isn't a case of either or. You get National Health Service in the UK regardless. I just want to make that kind of distinction just for British listeners who might be going, insurance?
Or others that have a different system. And
Yeah,
Lori, here,
exactly.
because much of our audience is going to be American at this point, I think we've realized that is a whole episode of
oh, yeah.
what we're calling the insurance mentality
Mm-hmm.
that I think we really need to delve into as a whole topic. But you're absolutely right, and that I word it makes my skin crawl, the amount of personal power that we have given up
I
in
think on that,
place of that.
as far as the power goes, because that takes me to something that we were discussing a few days ago. Um, when we talk about the fear, this fear factor of leaving a 9 to 5, of leaving that real job, the normal, what you've been conditioned to think that you're supposed to do, grow up and, be a member of society in this way where you're working for someone else. We have a lot of fear of judgment as well. I think that is a lot of issues for women, is this judgment that they might get from their peers, from their family, from their children, of trying to start something new on their own. It can be out of this world for some people. But I think now that, especially since, we went through the pandemic and we were all kind of stuck at home and looking for other ways to sustain ourselves financially, a lot of information started coming out about what is actually going on kind of in this real world, in this normal kind of 9 to 5 job. People started really seeing the struggles of the everyday person, and that, especially through the pandemic, these 1% billionaires just kept growing their wealth while everyone else was struggling. And then you get all the conspiracy theories and that kind of thing. So I think that really started to wake people up of, do I want to be building this future for someone else? Do I want to be working my tail off to just barely make ends meet so this person can go live, a happy-go-lucky life on their yacht and travel around the world, right? Why can't I have that type of freedom? Why can't I go out and travel? So that's really where I think now people see that.
Yeah.
And so now we need to break down those barriers. How can we break these barriers down, right? Leslie, this is something that you do with women, talking
Yeah.
about exactly what you have been talking about. Lori, you are the epigenetic genius. I know you call yourself an epigenetic geek, but I think, it's such a genius realm to be studying, because we have these blockages that are passed down through generations that we are completely unaware of. And I think financially, as women, now is the time to empower ourselves to think outside the box. There's so much out there for, digital marketing, network marketing, being in front of your computer. I mean, the opportunities are endless right now of how we can, people are making money selling their socks online. I mean, there's just, Yeah.
Jenny, I think that's you're raising a really important point, which I'm going to call a reality check,
Mm,
because when I was coming into the workforce, it wasn't possible to start a business the way it is now. We were not online. Business was brick and mortar. The funds that it took to set anything up in 3D were significant. And it wasn't the way things were. And it was also the case that in the real world with real jobs, there was actual security in those days. So I'll just be, very a little radical and say, if somebody, sold their soul 50 years ago, to take a corporate job, and, they actually got something for that. They did get a lifetime security and a pension and full health benefits and all of that. They were selling it for something. That's not the case anymore.
mhm.
Companies don't, there isn't any security. I happen to have been part of, when AT&T, the phone company, was broken up here in the US. I was working for the bank that was the trustee. That corporate culture was destroyed. I mean, up until then, generations, like when you went to work for Ma Bell, you were set for life, and they were laid off. I mean, that was never supposed to happen. So what I'm going to suggest, just to build on what Jenny said, the choices that we're looking at these days are really very different, because there is way more opportunity I'm not even going to call it a gig economy, because that I don't think honors it, but the potential of starting businesses that can really capitalize on the gifts that we have with the technology, that's going on, are really very promising and very feasible for lots of us, where it wasn't years ago. And on the other side, the rewards for going the route of a real job are much less robust than they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the comparison has completely shifted in the past few decades. And as Jenny said, more and more people became aware of this in the last few years.
And I
And
think
I think
COVID
it's
is a big thing
completely
to do
changed
that.
the landscape.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think COVID changed things not only from the perspective of technology and accelerating use of things like Zoom, for example, but people's expectation of a work-life balance changed
Mhm.
significantly as a result of COVID. I don't know about America, but in the US, we have a lot of our public sector who are being told they have to go back to the office 5 times a week, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
They're pushing back against it. We've got the likes of, which company is it? JP Morgan, the big financial company in the UK, have told their staff they have to come back 5 times a week. That is making people question, do I actually want to work for an organization that is now restricting my ability to choose the balance of my life? I have been, as we all have, I worked in corporate for 20 years. I had absolutely no entrepreneurial ambition whatsoever, because I was brought up to work hard at school, go to university, get on the corporate ladder, climb that ladder, and at the end of it say, thank you very much, I'll now take my pension. And it was only when my children were really small and the choices, and I didn't realize they were choices at the time, I thought they were enforced upon me. The choices were, go to work up in London, an hour and a half away, leave your husband, who'd set up his own business, to feed the children breakfast, to then take them off to nursery, whilst I went up to London and prayed to God that I'd catch the right train home so I could give them a kiss goodnight if I was lucky. And it was only when I woke up to, is this how you want to be living your life? Are you being good at anything? Are you being a good wife, a good mother, a good employee? And I felt I was rubbish on all three areas. And it was only when I stopped and thought, actually, do I want to be doing this? Or do I want to be doing something else? And right at that point in time, I didn't know what that something else was. And that something else certainly wasn't what I am doing now. But if I hadn't taken myself off that hamster wheel and decided I wanted to create change, I would have been choosing a very different relationship with my children, with my husband, with my employer. I was giving the power to my employer. I didn't know then what I know now. I took back the power when I said, no thanks, here's my resignation, I'm leaving. I want to explore a different path. And I think that is what everybody should be asking themselves, do I feel I am enforced to do what I'm doing? If so, why do I feel that? And going back to your question, Jen, if money was not a factor, what would you be doing? Why would you be doing it? And how can you make it your reality? Because there may well be physical reasons why, but once you've identified them, then you can find a solution to circumnavigate them. And then you can end up creating a life by your choosing and not feeling that somebody else has your power.
Leslie, I have to jump in with something. There's a distinction here that I think is so baked in to our collective conditioning that it obscures some really important stuff here. And that is, we've all been conditioned to believe, I think this is so baked in, that we need to struggle and effort in order to accomplish or receive anything in life.
Okay.
And I would like to suggest that potentially it's quite the opposite. And I think for women, this is particularly interesting because most of us have gifts and talents and abilities. I refer to them often as superpowers. And because our superpowers come to us so easily, because they are natural gifts and we don't have to effort and struggle for them, we don't value them.
Indeed.
So when, we were recognizing that many women, quote unquote, don't know what it is they're good at or what they want to do, probably they know that they love taking care of children or speaking to groups or something. But because that comes so easily, it's just what they do. It's not work, quote unquote. And if it's not work and effort and struggle, then they don't deserve to get compensated for it. So it would never even show up on their screen as a possibility. And I think some of us are sort of examples of turning that around, Leslie. I think you are, because the skills that you found in yourself of coaching people and holding that kind of space, that didn't show up on your resume, I'm
No.
guessing.
No.
We didn't think of those things. I talk about, my superpowers. I see all of you in terms of our superpowers, that I collect and connect amazing people. That didn't show up on my resume, but it is very much, the special sauce that I bring to things that brings value to the activities that I'm pursuing now. So I think there's even a more fundamental way to turn this around that in our world we've never even considered, which are, what are the things that come the most easily to me? So
Yeah.
I'm curious how that lands out there.
And the epigenetic geek must bring to everyone's attention the fact of the matter is that we think we're only carrying our ancestors' physical DNA, when the reality is we're carrying their emotional baggage as well. All of that, those thoughts, those beliefs, those things that wired their lives gets passed on generationally as well. And 90 to 98% of the time, honestly, that's a fact, quantum science, 90 to 98% of the time, you are reacting based upon those subconscious programs. Now, when you stop and think, how far we have come as women in the last 50 years, not to mention the last 100 years. And when you go back 100 years, you're only talking your grandmothers.
Yeah.
So, right? So your mothers had their beliefs that worked 50 years ago. Your grandmothers had their beliefs and your great grandmothers that go back like 100 years. Well, that stuff's still operating in your subconscious. And until you get in there and do some work to clean that stuff up, all the stuff we're talking about, being conscious, asking questions, choosing for ourselves, not giving our power away. We're not wired subconsciously to do that. So when I work with my clients, whether it's one-on-one or in my group coaching, I'm teaching a new program starting in March, Living Consciously. It's all about the art of living consciously, because that is bar none one of the hardest things there is to do, because of that simple fact of the reactive behavior of the subconscious.
Yeah.
If I were to draw a circle on a piece of paper, and that circle were 6 inches in circumference, the 6 inches is the subconscious mind. If I put a pin drop in the center, that is the conscious mind. So you got this massive subconscious filled with all kinds of gunk that you have absolutely no idea what's in there. And until you clean that up, that little dot in the middle is struggling and struggling and struggling. So be aware of that and figure it out. Work with somebody. I'd be happy to help you, because this is the work I do in the world and I absolutely love it. And yes, Jenny, you're right. Epigenetic geek galore. That's my world.
Lori, I just got a flash when you were talking. I'll just say this quickly because I'm looking at the four of us, and I was just getting this fantasy of our four mothers being on a screen together, having a conversation, or even more ludicrously, our four maternal grandmothers. Now, I mean, that's ludicrous because there was no Zoom, there was nothing like this. But what you're reminding us is, on some level, it's the four of them that are often showing up in the background, unknown. And what I'd like to say, that's not just to us, but to everybody listening, is, hey, this is a little reality check. This is 2025. You are listening to this on, Spotify or watching it on YouTube. This is a new world. The opportunities are way bigger. The cost of entry is way, way lower. And on the other side, the opportunities out there in the real world continue to diminish. So your actual 3D choices look completely different than they did before. And the 5D choices, and I'll just say this and I'll, complete for now, is that the light quotient on the planet is higher than it has ever been. I have spent weeks in the beginning of this year listening to astrologers and channels and psychics. We are in a completely different vibrational environment that we were in even just a few weeks ago. And so I really invite all of our audience and listeners to be asking themselves some of these questions, because this is a completely new day. And we are here to be carrying on a very different conversation.
Yes, so let's ask questions, okay? And we also want to offer solutions. It's not just about the questions, it's about solutions, okay? So as Lori was saying, she is, a lifestyle and wellness coach, but she really delves into these blockages that we have in epigenetics. And it's so fascinating to really get in there and figure out what's going on, where it's coming from. Why do we have triggers the way we do? Why do things show up in our lives continuously? Why can't we break free from these certain cycles that we find ourselves in, these patterns that are generational traumas that have been passed down, generational baggage? Trauma is such a negative word, but we have this baggage that we want to release. I also want to say, for me personally, I worked a lot with Susan when I was first kind of developing my superpower and realizing what was showing up for me that I loved and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to show up in the world and how I wanted to represent myself and in this kind of legacy way, and what do I want my kids to think of me and as I go forward, and whatever. But Susan really worked with me in that realm of wealth dynamics. And we haven't really touched on that yet, but we should, because this is a really amazing amazing tool to discover a little bit more about you and your inner workings and things that really light you up and where you show up in this realm of wealth dynamics. And that also goes into human design. Susan was showing me my human design chart, and we really worked in that realm, and it was fascinating, completely mind-blowing. And with the tools that we use, I use a lot of frequency tools, and with that I was able to multiply this breaking free of, these norms that I found myself in, these patterns that I found myself in. I was able to, break free of these negative neural connections and rewire my brain in certain ways that I'm firing now on so many cylinders that I wasn't before. And so I really feel superhuman at times. And then we have Leslie, who then will come in and really talk to you about where you're at financially, make you understand and be comfortable with where you're at and how you feel about your goals and your financial dreams and aspirations. And I think that, all of us together, we offer all of these really cool things. And I want our audience to bring their questions to our Facebook group. We have a brilliant page and group, so please go and join. All of the information is in our show notes. And come join us and let us know about your financial goals for the year and what your fears are. It's a safe space that we've created, so we really want to open this up for women to come and have this conversation with us. And let's see what we can do for 2025 to make it the most amazingly abundant year yet. So on that note, I will say thank you all so much for joining us. And we will see you next time on Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Women's Wealth and Wellness Unleashed, where we empower women to take control of the two most important areas of their life, their health and their wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another amazing woman who's ready to elevate her wealth and wellness journey. Stay connected with us by heading to our website and joining our Facebook community. All the details can be found in the show notes. Until next time, keep thriving and unleashing your highest potential.